This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. Our guest today is Danielle Robinson, the surviving spouse of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, for whom the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson honoring our PACT Act was named. It's a good name. She's going to tell us more about her husband, his advocacy, and how she continues to carry the torch as Burn Pit's 360 activist and advocate, fighting for service members and veterans exposed to hazardous environments while serving.
I'm excited about this one.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a good episode. Hey, before we do that, Paris Fashion Week, it wrapped up tightly, both literally and figuratively.
I love fashion.
Oh yeah, with Gigi Hadid, who wore a mini dress made up of yellow and red DHL duct tape, which was definitely economic, because most of these gowns go for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But by the way, speaking of duct tape, did you know that it was originally created during World War II by an American mother, Vesta Stout, who worked at a munitions factory worker? She actually saw a better way of creating sealers for soldiers' packages, from ammunition boxes to a fix-all solution for split boots, fenders on Jeeps, makeshift bandages and stuff. So it's safe to say that duct tape now is not only something that holds planes together, but also trusses up models on runways. So there you go.
Well, I know that Joe knew about it, and he also knew about Gigi Hadid because I was following him on Twitter, and he was tweeting live about Paris Fashion Week. So, or was that another?
I had to turn the camera off. I got upset. I love fashion, as you can see. I think this shirt is actually from Hobo Nation, but
I thought I saw some comments about Joe getting up in arms because it wasn't UPS brown. I thought he wanted turd brown and not DHL red and yellow.
Yeah, I'm okay as long as it's not FedEx colors, because then they would have been late.
Oh, whammy.
I think the amount of things that you can do with a paperclip and duct tape, nobody can find more applications than MacGyver or a U.S. soldier. Yeah,
that's true. Duct tape, no joke. I know I had a corpsman buddy of mine that we constantly fussed at. He would choose duct tape over anything. He would basically, instead of wrapping anything with anything else, he'd throw a little 2x2 on top of something and just duct tape the whole thing up. You gotta stop. Had a roll he carried with him on his hip. He's from Louisiana.
Serious question: do you guys think duct tape is sufficient, or do you actually go for Gorilla Tape now?
Well, as a photographer, we actually use something called gaffer's tape. Gaffer's tape it doesn't leave behind residue. So, the one thing about duct tape is you can guarantee you're going to leave behind some that really gross sticky stuff. You're going to have to get the Goo Gone out or really scrub it or just whereas gaffer's tape, it really sticks just as good as duct tape, but it doesn't leave behind, but it's twice as expensive. So anyway, I'm a gaffer.
But if you're going to kidnap somebody and don't want to leave residue, is money really an object?
True. I mean, if you're going to be one of those high-end bandits, I'm
going to be a high-end. If I'm going to be
I think everybody needs to make budgetary considerations for all their operational expenditures these days.
Well, if you're going to be breaking the law, you might as well make the money on the bad end so you can spend the money on the gaff tape, Adam.
Okay. All right, Alphas. Well, no matter what kind of tape you use, please stick around, and we'll be back with Danielle Robinson right after the break.
Attention retired uniformed service members and families of active duty military. Taking care of your eyes is important. That's why Blue Cross Blue Shield FEP Vision is committed to supporting the vision health of those who have sacrificed so much for our country. You can count on frame allowance, covered lens treatments, and a large network of independent providers and national retailers in all 50 states. And with open season for enrollment starting soon, now they want you to see what the benefit of blue can do for you. Learn more at bcbsfepvision.com.
Today, we're joined by Burn Pits 360 activist and advocate Danielle Robinson. Danielle, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Danielle. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, Stacey.
It's an honor to meet you, and I've spent so much time with your story, and of course, through you, Heath's story, while researching for this interview. And I feel like I feel very honored to be able to share this space with you. And so, thanks for taking the time to be with us. And while I could be the one to share your story, I think alphas would appreciate it, hearing it from your own lips. So, to whatever your comfort level, can you share a little bit about your own story, Heath's story, the work that you're doing to honor his memory today, and how the Burn Pits 360 activism that you're doing today came about?
Absolutely. So Heath was in the Ohio Army National Guard, and he was deployed to Kosovo and Iraq. And we ended up dating right before he went to Iraq. And when he came home, we ended up getting married and having a little girl. And he was very physically fit. He was NCO of the Year for the Ohio National Guard for 2012, 2013. He was very health driven, very physically fit, and wellness was a huge part of his life. So in 2016, he had just ran a half marathon at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And when he got back from that run, he just kind of told me, he's like, something was off. Those last couple miles of the run, I just couldn't really catch my breath like I used to. And I just felt like something is off. So about 2 months later, he went down to Georgia for a 2-week training with the Guard. And when he got home, I started noticing bloody tissues in the bathroom trash cans. And I asked him, I said, "Are you having bloody noses?" And he's like, "Yeah, I started getting them down when I was in Georgia. And I don't know why. I'm just thinking it's the climate change, and they just haven't stopped yet." And so at that point in time, I'm a physical therapist, and I kind of pressed him to go to his primary care physician at that time to inquire about the nosebleeds. And he had a complete blood cell count performed, and that came back normal. And then about a month later, fatigue was really setting in. So he was getting home from his active duty job. I was coming home from work, and I would find him asleep on the couch almost every evening during the week. And so again, red flag in my mind. I'm like, this isn't good. Like, you're 35 years old and you're coming home from your active duty job, and I'm finding you asleep on the couch. So I pressed him again, and he went back to the primary care physician. And at the time they said, well, maybe it's lower testosterone levels. You're in your upper 30s, your body is changing. And so he kind of just accepted that at that point in time. Another month goes by, and the bloody noses were still there, but he started losing his voice. And at that point in time, they referred him to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And that ear, nose, and throat doctor didn't know what was going on with him. And so he was then referred to an autoimmune disease specialist at Ohio State. They diagnosed him with a rare autoimmune disease called mucous membrane pemphigoid, and it's prevalent in 80-year-olds. It's not usually diagnosed in anybody young. This autoimmune disorder specialist literally had only diagnosed like 5 cases in 20 years of this disease. So why is a 35-year-old getting diagnosed with something like this? Of course, he comes home happy because he's like, well, the good news is I get treated with prednisone and steroids for the rest of my life, or maybe this can even go away because it's autoimmune. And so again, in my mind, being the physical therapist I am, I'm like, this just isn't making sense. And so I'm like, you know what, let's go back to ear, nose, and throat and start there. So he went back to an ear, nose, and throat for a visit. And he was getting sores in the inside of his mouth from the mucous membrane pemphigoid. And the ear, nose, and throat doctor just decided, well, you know what, let's do a chest CT scan on you. And they found all his lymph nodes were massive and enlarged. And at that point in time, they went ahead and biopsied one of the lymph nodes in his neck, and it came back positive for cancer. So this was on a Wednesday, and by Friday, we were into an oncologist here in Columbus, Ohio. Meantime, Heath was actually TRICARE because he was active duty. So we were very, very blessed he was TRICARE at the time. It was covering everything at 100%. So that oncologist, the first day we walked in, I'll never forget that first visit. He had looked over Heath's chart pretty extensively from the primary care and the ear, nose, and throat doctor and the autoimmune disease specialist. And so he kind of knew what was going on in the story. And the first words out of his mouth were, "What have you been exposed to?" Because the way your cancer is presenting and the way everything is presenting this is due to toxic exposure. And at that point in time, Heath and I were just kind of like, what? Oh, okay. Like, let's go home and radon test our house was our first instinct. And we're like, what could this be from? And it was that weekend that a spouse sent me an article about burn pits and how our military was starting to come down with illnesses and cancers and what they believed to be from being exposed to burn pits on deployments. And I went downstairs and, I had known Heath, this was 10 years later after being home from Iraq. And I asked him, I'm like, were you around a burn pit? And he's like, well, yeah, we all were to some extent. And he's like, yeah, I had guard duty about 20 yards from a burn pit for 3 months in Iraq. And I had never heard that word until that day. And, I had been in a relationship and married to this man for 10 years, and never once did he bring up the word burn pit. And right away, I became just so furious because I just couldn't believe that our military exposed so many of our veterans and soldiers to these open air burn pits where they literally burned everything. And it's stuff we would never even consider burning here in the United States. And I was extremely, extremely furious at that point in time.
What did you discover that they were burning that kind of astonished you the most?
Like human waste. I mean, just aerosols, rubbers, batteries. I mean, just everything went into these burn pits. So everything that's produces carcinogens went into these burn pits. They burned everything they didn't want the enemy to get a hold of, and everything that would build up they needed to expose of. So
yeah. So after Heath got the cancer diagnosis, how did things progress after that?
So unfortunately on that first day, the oncologist actually had to leave the room because he started to cry. He told us that we need to brace ourselves because Heath could probably have about 4 to 6 weeks to live.
That bad.
That bad. So he said it was so far along that he said, you guys need to go home now and prepare for end of life. Heath called, literally, we were on our way home and we called his parents. We called a couple of our military friends that are like our brothers and sisters. And we literally left that doctor's visit and went and talked to some of our loved ones. Some of the hardest conversations you'll ever have. And then from there, we went home and called his first sergeant, and he was still active duty. So we started meeting and making sure all his paperwork was ready, that if he were to die in the next few weeks, that we were as well prepared for it as we could be. And that oncologist that day also, Heath was a fighter. So right away, he's like, I want to battle this head on. Like, I'm not accepting terminal. I'm not accepting death in 4 to 6 weeks. So we're going to do whatever we can do to beat this. It was stage 4 lung cancer. His cancer was rare because there was no primary tumor to treat. It had been basically throughout his mucous membranes of his thorax, which is another reason why the oncologist said toxic exposure. And so it was an extremely hard cancer to try to treat. And basically, obviously, nobody ends up living long from this cancer. So we went home and we said, you know what? The oncologist is like, this is a Friday. They're like, you're going to start treatment for the most aggressive chemo on Monday. And we showed up at 6 a.m. on Monday morning and began his chemo. He was responding a little bit to the chemo. And then they went ahead and sent off his blood for biomarker testing. And they found out that the third test came back that he would respond to immunotherapy. So we began immunotherapy, and his body actually was fighting off the cancer through immunotherapy. So we were very, very blessed that we had that third one come back that he would respond.
So how did things go? Pretty well. Did he prolong past the 4 to 6 week projection, or?
He did. He ended up living for 3 years. So
that's a blessing.
We had a huge blessing. So he got to make so many more memories with our daughter. She was 3 at the time of diagnosis, and 6 at the time of his passing. So we were very, very blessed. He had about 12 to 18 months that the quality of life was pretty good for him. And then as soon as the immunotherapy stopped working, of course, quality of life and a really tough road ahead came. So the last 6 months were very, very challenging and very difficult.
Did you let him start winning all the little marital spats?
Yes, I let him do anything he wanted. He actually finished our basement during that time frame when he was feeling good, and he actually built a deck during that time frame and built a deck for another one of our Army buddies. So yeah, I pretty much let him.
What a crazy guy!
Live like he was dying. I let him do whatever he wanted.
Danielle, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for being here. It means so much, and hearing your story from your side of things, it's gutting. And not to take ownership of it, it's not mine. But I can't help but think of as I've progressed. I was a corpsman with Twin Marines. I lost my leg in Iraq in 2004. And as I've sort of grown in my stuff, I've started finally being able to see the other people that were affected, the doctors and Longstool and stuff like that, who just see people come through at the worst part and then they leave and they never find out what's going on. So for that oncologist to walk in the room and have to give that news, it shouldn't come from a stranger. And it sounds to me like that oncologist wasn't a stranger. But if he was that emotionally affected by that, he was there emotionally, which is it's so cool to be surrounded by he's blessed to be surrounded by you and that awesome daughter and the doctors and things like that were there to help him fight.
Absolutely. That oncologist actually, he became family over those 3 years.
I believe it.
And when I had to actually call him to ask him, hey, it's time, we need hospice, this doctor started crying on the phone again with me, and he just said, I can't believe the time is here. He's just like, I became good friends with Heath, and he became almost a son to me. And then literally this oncologist, when he sent stuff for the day of the funeral, he sent us Army National Guard rock to keep in the garden. And on the note, he actually said that he loved my husband. So
to go through what you've gone through and to be able to take ownership of one of the hardest moments that people can go through is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I think it's probably been the best thing that I have an amazing support system, just like it sounds like him, you know, like you, my wife is just fantastic. She's still hanging around somewhere up there. Upstairs. Don't worry. She's not.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh no.
I got that was awful. That wasn't even a joke. That's totally a joke I would make, but that was an unintended one.
You're good.
Okay, so gosh.
About it. He literally is hanging around, probably upstairs, listening to me. He messes with me. His spirit still,
I believe it.
Still is here. He was always a jokester, and he still pulls my chain and messes with me at times.
Well, hopefully he thought that one was funny. But I'm curious, because I feel like being able to take ownership is one of the best things I've done that was outside of my support system, and how incredible everybody was around me. I want to know about the moment where you decided that your hurt needed to be useful, where like that moment where you decided to take this personal tragedy and turn it into a mission for change. I want to know about that. Was it a day? Was it a day that turned into months of thinking about it and then planning? Like, I want to know that thought process of that shift.
Well, it was definitely the day that one of our fellow military spouses sent me that article about the burn pits, because that I was so pissed.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just
good word for it.
Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, my husband is 35 years old and he's going to die. And it's because of something that seemed like it could have been controlled and regulated, which it wasn't. And I just was like, you know, if I haven't heard about this, and I'm married to a veteran and a soldier, how many other civilians and other military spouses, literally their spouses are walking around and they haven't even told them that they've been exposed to something so large and so big. And we all know that carcinogens in the air, and we're breathing them in, it's going to obviously cause issues down the road. And obviously there were warnings from tests over there and everything about air quality and what was going to happen down the road. So at that moment, that's what really, I knew I had to help him first thing. He was my priority. And luckily it was my mom that was actually retired and could step up and do more of the research and start advocating. But we were cautious because he was active duty. We still were extremely worried about sharing his story and sharing his name. There was a senator that we actually reached out to who actually started kind of getting on board more out in Washington with trying to help legislation, because VSOs had been out there already for a decade trying to get legislation passed for the toxic exposure illnesses. And so there was a senator that we actually reached out to, but he kept wanting to know, you know, Heath's name. And he actually respected the fact that we didn't want to give that yet. And he still worked on trying to share the story as much as he could, and pressing for change out in Washington for legislation. So, and then the other point I would say, when it really became, okay, I need to do something about it, was when we did get medically separated and we began at the VA, and we had a nurse come out and evaluate Heath and I for his impairments and his disability ratings and stuff. And he was 100% service connected at this point.
Yeah.
So we thought, oh, well, he's going into the VA, everything should be covered. He's 100% service connected. And that wasn't the case. So he started having medications denied. At some point, he was provided oxygen when he needed it, but they wouldn't provide an oxygen concentrator for him to leave the house. And again, he was 100% service connected. So in my mind, I'm like, why is this not occurring? If you get an oxygen concentrator to leave a house in the civilian world, why can't a veteran whose oxygen level requires oxygen, why can't
And he's in his 30s.
And he's in his 30s. So
like, let the guy live his life.
Exactly. I'm like, he's terminal. What if we want to push him in the wheelchair and take him for a walk for a half hour. So it became a point where we had to ration his oxygen tanks to be able to get him to appointments. This is a 35-year-old veteran who served 2 tours overseas in combat zones, and you're going to sit here and ration his oxygen and give him a reduced quality of life while he's fighting a battle that he should have never had to fight in the first place. Well, then I was denied caregiver benefits, even though we were rated as the highest level tier 3 by a nurse that came out and evaluated.
You're going to make me flip out in my office right now.
And that is what extremely motivated me, because again, I'm like, he has 100% service connection. And you literally, like, I literally was bathing my husband at this point in time. He couldn't climb our stairs anymore. So I was sleeping on the love seat across from him at night in case he went through a puking spell. He still was having these uncontrollable nosebleeds. So sometimes it would take us 45 minutes to an hour to get those under control. All the while he's sitting here on an oxygen tank. So it just became literally a smack in the face at that point from the VA. And that is what really fired me up.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, maybe on some level I was hoping that was going to be an inspiring answer.
Sorry.
No, this is what we're here for.
Yeah.
Like this is like, and we're on the VA. Don't get me wrong, but we do try to give them credit where credit's due, but it's stuff like this that makes me go, if there was a human, just like, talking about my buddy Mark Kressel, if there was a human that sat down and looked at this case at some point, there's no way that they would allow this through outside of neglect, greed, or carelessness. And none of those answers satisfy. And so don't apologize, because rage is a very, very good reason to be motivated to work on a mission for change. And so I couldn't keep going. I could just sit here and like rage for about 3 minutes, but I'm gonna.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and it is enraging to hear what you and he went through and what that lived experience was like, and that nobody should have to endure that. But maybe it is inspiring when I look at at you, Danielle, and what you did and were for your family, to be able to be that strength and revolve, but also to be this voice for saying, like, hold on, like, wait a minute, this makes absolutely no sense. And I think, to Joe's point, aside from, the pain of what you had to go through, it was the catalyst for something much greater, something that honors and defines your husband's life and service. And then also that fire within you, the honoring our PACT Act, which, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on that a little bit in the journey of that, because it's been so much for so many people to not have to have somebody endure the things that you guys experience. And then, like there's still a lot of work left to do on it as well. So whatever you feel like sharing with respect to that.
Thanks, Adam. The PACT Act was, again, such a large piece of legislation that finally got passed to help so many of our veterans in different eras. And the leading up to that, there was just so many people out on Capitol Hill and in Washington fighting for this for so long. And, it really took a village to get that across the finish line. And, there were many more people before me that were out there for years. And then, after receiving so many no's, they got discouraged and kind of stepped back. And, it just took the right momentum to get that across the finish line. And, I do believe that, John Stewart and John Field coming on board is what really helped that. They knew kind of what to do out in Washington with the 9/11 first responders, and having them come on board with all this was just amazing, when it's something they didn't really have to do, but they gave up their time and energy to come fight with us out in Washington. And it was people like Will Thompson, he was a veteran who had, a lung transplant, and he was out there, on oxygen, following a lung transplant, having to advocate for himself. And, it was seeing all those other veterans before Heath and I that really helped get that momentum going and the spirit within a lot of us. And I think John Stewart and John Field really saw what was going on and saw the need because we were
I
getting
also got to become good friends with Tim Jensen and Will Wisner
absolutely
from Grunt Style and now Grunt Style Foundation. And Will was
absolutely.
with you at Burn Pit 360, right?
Yeah, yes, he
So
was. Yes, he's a phenomenal guy.
yeah, so hearing about all the incredible stuff that those guys did right alongside you, like I was just blown away, and get to do some advocacy work on breakthrough therapy stuff with them now. So
Absolutely.
it does take a community and a
There
village.
is a lot more to do. That is for sure. And some of the stuff even overlaps. So like suicide and PTSD and everything. So yeah, they're wonderful, wonderful men. The one thing that was kind of chilling when I was researching and starting to go out to Washington was I was in bed one night just kind of researching things about the burn pits. And I did come across that Bo Biden and Heath were actually deployed to the same bases and roughly at the same time. So at the time when the VA was like, this, we need our research, I was just like, well, these guys are your research, these are young men dying in their 30s and 40s of cancers. And so it became very, very personal. And receiving the phone call to be a guest at the State of the Union address, I did not have any idea. That actually occurred literally the night before the State of the Union address. John Stewart called me up and was like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Treating patients, John." And he goes, "Well, the First Lady wants you to come out to Washington and be a guest with her at the State of the Union address."
Wow.
And it's John Stewart. So I'm like, are you pranking me? Like, this is before April 1st. Is this an April Fool's joke? Like, I literally didn't even know what to say or do when he called me. But he's like, I need all your information. I need to get you cleared, all this stuff. And I'm like, John, I am literally at work treating patients right now. It's just funny, but
Hold this kettlebell. John Stewart's calling.
yeah. So
This
it did
guy.
feel like real life. It was pretty wild. But yeah, so I got out there for the State of the Union address, and one of the chilling moments that I knew, I just had a feeling this was going to happen. It was a reassuring moment from Heath. He had passed away in 2020 during the peak of COVID, and his headstone was supposed to be placed around the holidays of December. And due to COVID, it wasn't. And so I'm sitting there getting ready for the State of the Union address, and I get a phone call from Columbus, Ohio, and it is the Gravestone Company. And they were calling to let me know that Heath's headstone was placed that morning, the day
Wow.
of the State of the Union.
Wow. I don't know if you can beat those odds. Like, that seems more than coincidental. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was very chilling, and then at the same time very comforting.
Yeah.
And I just started crying. It was just one of those moments that it was a reassurance that, you know what, I'm up here and I know what we're gonna do. So it was a very, very special moment.
Yeah, that's powerful. Now that the PACT Act's in place, that doesn't mean that everything's kind of smooth sailing. And you've talked a lot about veterans being their own advocate and keeping the VA honest about making sure that they're being held accountable, but also, that the diagnostics are being run properly. It was so, you talk about also recognizing the signs and the symptoms. I've always been very athletic. I've always been very healthy. And I remember it was probably my first deployment was 2003, and it had been a couple of years after my first deployment, but I was chasing my horses. They had gotten loose, and so I was running through the woods, and I suddenly had an asthma attack, and I'd never had an asthma attack in my life. I didn't even know what was happening to me, but I couldn't catch my breath. And my friend at the farm was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, I couldn't even breathe to respond. And her daughter had asthma attacks, and she's like, "You're having an asthma attack." I'm like, "I don't have asthma." Like, I finally had been able to like get myself down. And I kind of chalked it up as to like pollen in the air because it was the spring and I had run through a field. So I didn't think anything of it. And I went through a bunch of other deployments. Um, and like a couple years later, I was running to meet I was hustling to get from one flight to another. And I had the same problem. I could not get air in my lungs, and I had another asthma attack, and I'm like literally like water rolling down my my face, and the flight attendants were like, "We're gonna call medics," and I'm like,
No.
I'll be okay. And I'm like turning to the little airplane window, like, "Fine." Like it literally couldn't, like my face is turning blue, and they're like, "Do you have an inhaler? You're an asthmatic." I'm like, "I don't have asthma."
I have asthma.
Well, so I finally decided to talk to my GP about it.
Yeah.
And what they're like, "It is exercise induced asthma." And I'm like, "I have never had asthma in my life. You're crazy." But the thing is, I had literally been exposed to burn pits in Iraq and also the Horn of Africa. The running trail was right next to the burn pit in Africa. Um, so what are some of the signs and symptoms people should be looking for one? And what are some of the diagnostics that should be being done right now as well?
Absolutely. As far as the respiratory illnesses go, obviously what you said, like if you're exercising, you're running, you're exerting yourself, and you're just not able to catch your breath, or you're feeling short of breath. I mean, that's a major red flag. So don't ignore it. The sooner that, you do get to a doctor, whether it be through the VA or civilian, the faster they can hopefully diagnose what is going on. And for Heath, if you do have any type of bleeding issues, obviously that's something. Wheezing's another thing. Just general fatigue, a cough that just won't go away, and is not accompanied by a cold. And basically, chest tightness or any feeling of you can't really expand the chest as far as you used to be able to during exertion too. Those are obviously all the respiratory signs, but I was recently talking to someone out in Colorado, and it was someone that had been in touch with the veteran, and they're trying to convince this 36-year-old veteran to go back for testing. And this veteran, also exposed to burn pits, I guess has been having blood in his urine and has been throwing up a lot for no reason. So obviously any type of change to the body that you're just like, wait, this wasn't going on, a month ago or something like that. Don't wait. I know a lot of military, veterans and soldiers that they think they can grit it out, or they can tough it out, or get their mind right. Like that was always the saying he said they had over in Iraq, is get your mind right. It's not always in your head. And I think that's where, unfortunately, the stigma still lies at the VA is unfortunately, I think when veterans have come in, and they haven't done a lot of diagnostic testing, but they've done just listening to the symptoms, I think a lot of veterans have been told it's in their head. So I just want them to know, since the PACT Act has occurred, there is more, obviously, screenings going on, and they're running millions and millions of veterans through. And yes, we are working on getting more testing done and them doing more testing. So please just be advocates for your own health. Please go get the help and question it. Also document, because, you know, that's one of the things I wish I would have done a little bit more with Heath, just so I could look back and see better timelines and stuff with even his symptoms. You know, even if it's something little, create just like a little journal, put the date, put the time, put what you were doing, and then how you felt. Um, that can go a long way with doctors when you actually go in and you have a recorded log of like how often, instead of them asking like, oh, well, how often did this happen? And you go, well, I guess maybe like, you know, 2 or 3 times when I was exercising, or, but if you actually have like a log of something like that, you know, that can show more, or you might even forget how often it's occurring. So that's definitely something I recommend for any veteran that is starting to question a change in their health.
I would add there, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
If you
no, go ahead.
continue, by all means. If you, all right. Well, I would add also that one of the things, if you have trouble advocating for yourself, think about it in so much that you bringing awareness to what you're going through only gives data and information to help the people coming after you.
Absolutely.
So this is awful that this has happened, but the point of what you're trying to do is to make this useful in some way to help. And obviously it can't fix what you've gone through, but if there's one person that you can save from even 10-20% of what you yourself had to go through, then all this is makes sense. You know, it gives a like a touch of peace to it.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, the earlier, I mean, heaven forbid, it is a cancer.
Yeah.
Obviously, the earlier it's staged and the earlier it's caught, the more chances you don't have a terminal diagnosis. So that was something that Heath knew right away, that it was too late for him. But he was like, I want you to share my story because, you know, what about my other brothers and sisters? Know, and that was something that we thought of immediately. You know, that was one of his first gut instincts when we figured out in that, you know, when we went home that weekend and the military spouse shared the article and then he told me it was around the burn pits. On Monday, that was like what he said. He's like, you know what? What about our friend? What about Bart? What about Travis? What about Matt? What about all our military friends that we have? Because we were a very close-knit community because it was the Ohio National Guard. You know, a lot of who he was deployed with was here in Columbus. So I still am in touch with all of them. They're still like my family. And so right away, after he accepted, okay, this is what I was just told, he was right away like, what about the rest of them? And so that is something that, yes, the earlier something is diagnosed, the better. So
It's such a veteran response, and I love that from our community, because it's like once you either get some answers or answers that start impacting and affecting you, it's how do you turn around and help the community, like however big or small or whatever it is for you. And I think it's, you know, you did such a great job of talking about the things that you can be a personal advocate for, and when personal advocacy can then turn to advocacy for others, you know, in the community. And one of the last questions I was going to have was, you know, kind of the advice you had for recommending for somebody that was going to navigate through that. But actually, I'd just like to highlight what you did say, which I hadn't heard before, was kind of keeping a journal and a log of those things, of what happened on what date, you know, what treatment you were getting, et cetera, and then how you felt about it. And I think that can be absolutely so valuable, especially when the system can kind of feel overwhelming, you know, at times. So just having communities to plug into. And then I would imagine that there's also those that want to advocate, you know, for others. And so if any of our listeners are out there wanted to become more engaged and help kind of champion and partner with this kind of work, what do you say to them, Danielle?
Absolutely. So one place you could go is to burnpits360.org. Burn Pits 360 has been working alongside of doctors and doing their own research and advocating for years for this, as well as we are working with the director for the PACT Act at the VA. So we're in communications with that and trying to get more implemented and established through the VA. We're trying to get standardized protocols done at the VA, better training for the healthcare providers at the VA. But absolutely, one of the best foundations to stay in touch with the work ahead is Burn Pits 360. Also reaching out to any of the VSOs out there, American Legion, they've been doing wonderful work too. Burn Pits 360 and American Legion have definitely partnered up a lot lately with trying to push forward a lot of what we're still creating within the VA. We're also trying to get more presumptive illnesses added to the PACT Act as well. And we're currently working with trying to do just that with constrictive bronchiolitis. So that is another diagnosis that's coming through, and we're finding in our veterans when veterans are being diagnosed with things like asthma.
What do you mean?
We gotta get the differential diagnosing better.
Yeah.
So that's definitely reach out to the Legion, reach out to Burn Pits 360.
It's very informative.
Absolutely.
I think that if there's anything that we can do, not just as alphas, but also as a group of people who empathize and hurt, just 1% of what you're going through, please let us know. And honestly, I think the one thing that I've gotten out of this is that there needs to be a system in place for this kind of thing. There needs to be accountability, and there needs to be consequences. And because right now it feels like there's no one to bear this cross but you. And we're happy to lean in and put a hand under it to try and do what we can to ease some of that burden. But we have to, as veterans, we have to do what they taught us to do and work together and get stuff done. So good grief.
Village.
Joe loves all those buzzwords and buzzwords.
I like it.
He wrote too many reports in the military. Tip of the spear.
Yeah, I always did it in haikus though. So they were always like, what is this and why does it rhyme? But we really appreciate the time you spent with us. We'll have all your social handles and websites and everything in the show notes.
Okay.
Before we sign off, though, is there anything that you want to share with the alphas that we didn't discuss?
I don't think so. Not at this moment.
Danielle, you're the best. You're a rock star. Keep doing what you're
Thank
doing.
you.
If there's anything that you ever need from us, please let us know, and the alphas will rally. We're right behind you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate your time today.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Danielle.
alphas, stick around. We've got some scuttlebutt right after the break.
Okay.
Scuttle booty.
As a veteran, you've done more than your fair share of providing support. Now it's our turn. Introducing the WellCare and the American Legion Partnership and the WellCare Medicare Advantage plans that give you more support, more access, and more benefits in addition to your VA benefits. Visit wellcareforveterans.com today or call 844-917-1165. Ohana Health Plan, a plan offered by WellCare Health Insurance of Arizona, Inc. New Mexico Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan, DSNP members. As a WellCare by All Well DSNP member, you have coverage from both Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid services are funded in part by the state of New Mexico. New Mexico Medicaid benefits may be limited to payment of Medicare premiums for some members.
Okay,
All right.
alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Joe?
Thank you so much, Adam. The United States is home to one of the most controversial military bases in the world, and it's possible that you've never even heard of it. Tonopah Test Range, known as Area 52 by veterans and conspiracy theorists alike, is shrouded in secrecy about what exactly goes on there in the Nevada or Nevada desert. During the Cold War, Tonopah witnessed 4 dirty bomb and over 800 underground detonations that subsequently contaminated the surrounding area, from the soil to nearby waterways. While they didn't know it at the time, the service members stationed there were regularly exposed to ionizing radiation from these tests, and that's where the Hulk was created. Many suffered negative health effects later in life, though, which is not as funny as the Hulk. While retired veterans are guaranteed medical care through the VA, the majority who served at Tonopah have been denied treatment. So because of the classified nature of the work done at Tonopah, and the fact that it's awfully convenient that people can't just wander around the area because it's not safe, the records of those who served there are sealed. But this lack of treatment, along with the DoD refusal to release their medical records and the government's failure to acknowledge the nature of their service, has led several Tonopah veterans to spearhead a campaign to force change. And so now at the helm of this is Mark Eli, who inspected several Soviet MiGs at the base while serving as a tactical aircraft technician. So Eli is one of many, perhaps hundreds, who believe their illnesses are connected to their time at Tonopah. And we've seen stuff like this happen. You know, the government and the military, we end up sometimes being exposed to things that we don't see the long-term consequences of for years. You know, that's why we're dealing with things like burn pits and you know, and going back to Agent Orange and the generational health issues that have popped up that we've finally been able to link to some of these things. And so in his case, he's got a quote that says, "It scarred my lungs. I've got cysts on my liver. I started having lipomas, tumors inside my bodies that I had to remove. My lining in my bladder was shed, and I started peeing blood, and my bladder even shrunk. I got stage 3 kidney disease." So because the federal government won't acknowledge the service of those stationed at that specific classified site, these veterans say they've been fighting for decades to prove it's the reason they're sick. And they've struggled to get medical compensation like other veterans can. So what do you, this is just like, there's no upside to this one. I mean, this guy is being left out sort of in the dirt here, you know? I mean, where else do you get these health issues?
I mean, my take's pretty practical. Yeah, I mean, like the alien thing, you know, kind of aside, like what do we know actually transpired out there? And do we know that environmental toxins have an impact on the physiological of the individual? And it's kind of a no-brainer. And I mean, that was the reason of the PACT Act, to be able to draw that, you know, correlation, you know, between those things.
Yeah.
And then I understand like the added challenge of the individuals there versus their, you know, files being sealed, records being sealed. But like to connect the dots on this is not so hard to do.
No. And I think also that sometimes you get to see the sort of the gaps in the system. And what happens is that you realize that sometimes it looks like people aren't looking at this stuff, because any logical human that was looking at these records could see. And so it's either financially motivated or it's you know, accidental neglect or purposeful neglect. And none of those things are good. None of those answers supply anything that satisfies, you know, as to how this happened.
I have a theory, but maybe this is okay. Let me put my tinfoil hat on for a second, guys. I wonder, you know, we're looking at our veterans, right? And the pathology of this. He obviously isn't the only one affected, which, sir, I'm very sorry this is happening to you. This is lousy and it shouldn't. It's a travesty. So hopefully we can get this fixed. But looking at the bigger picture, we're obviously doing, or we did, or we still are, maybe not at Tonopah, but at other locations. But we were doing testing with dirty bombs and other things we may not know. This is Area 51 and 52. These are highly classified locations, so they're testing things we don't know about. So if we are testing things, we're going to be using them, or we have used them in other locations. Are we not releasing information because of plausible deniability? And in so doing, we are releasing ourselves from liability from other countries should they feel the effects that our veterans are feeling per ramifications from said bombs. So if it was indirect. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I hadn't thought of it at that angle. I mean, honestly, the amount of liability that could be at this point, you know, but then again,
further, if you talk about, let's say these bombs are stored, let's say we're storing them in a foreign country, one of our allies, and something leaks. So it leaks into their soil or their water table. And we know these things cause cysts in the liver, and it makes your freaking kidneys disease and your bladders bleed. And we know that, and we're killing our allies. Like, there's a lot of liability here. So there's a bigger thing at question here. So obviously, yeah, there are things we probably would not want to release for many, many reasons. But I think in the most immediate, one way we can make sure that we are taking care of our own freaking people.
Yeah.
Say, yeah, is there a link? If there's more than 1, 2, or 3 people linked to the same base and they're having the same freaking issues, it's pathologic.
Yeah.
It's linked to the same location. Take care of them, get them help, not later, now.
So he says for many, Eli was the one to inform them of the possible connection between their health issues and service at areas 51 and 52. And he's determined to get them the treatment that they deserve, no matter the cost. And to circle back around to what you were saying, though, Stacy, I want to bring up something else. First of all, it's completely plausible. And to me and you and Adam sitting here, that makes sense. But maybe we're giving them more credit than they deserve. Maybe it's literally them just not sitting down and looking at a case. I have a friend of mine.
I think that's very plausible.
Yeah. And I got a friend of mine named Mark Kressel who has a brain injury and can no longer drive. And him and his daughter have applied, she's his caretaker, have applied repeatedly and have gotten these conflicting denial letters for the caretaker program. He's got a TBI, he can't drive, but the VA is claiming that he could drive before. So why can't he drive now, without taking into account that he's had a traumatic brain injury, 2 cranioplasties over the last 2 years, and 3 brain surgeries overall. And you're telling me you want that guy on the road and you won't let him get the care that he needs? Like, this is wild stuff. I've got all the information on that. It's just, it's heartbreaking to me. And there's people like Mark Kressel, and then there's people like Eli here that our country owes them something.
Yeah,
it simply does. They've served and they've suffered, and it's super important that this stuff gets brought to light. And so I was speaking to Jody, his daughter, who I actually met. Funny story. These are people that I met at an American Legion convention, and then ran into them at a pet convention. And you know how when you have groups of people and then they overlap in ways you don't understand? When I ran into Jody and Mark at Super Zoo in Vegas, like years ago, there was a moment where my brain just shut down for about 10 seconds. And I was like, where am I? And
well,
why?
The question is, why were you at a Super Zoo convention, Joe? This feels
Joe goes to all the best conventions.
I was there with Bill Jack, because they love Galaxy and they want to bring Galaxy because he's on the dog treat. They raise money for America's Vet Dogs. So
total sidebar. I have that very bag of Bill Jack treats just because you and Galaxy are on the cover. No,
see,
I do.
So it was funny to have all those things overlap, but these are people that I've grown to know over the years, and they are Legionnaires, and these are people that I just thought that it would be important that we bring this up, because I think it ties in with what Eli is going through here. Like, this is just wild to me that these people are just sort of being left out. And so, of course, feel free to add comments on, but we do have links in the show notes as well. And if anybody wants information, any congressmen or representatives out there who want to know more about Mark Kressel, you reach out, because I've got all the denial letters and everything. This is something that I intend on personally trying to put as many eyes on as possible.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Well, shifting gears a bit here, Airbnb is offering guests a one-of-a-kind opportunity to stay in a real repurposed chopper in Brooksville, Florida. Also, shout out to former Tango Off Lima guest Chip Conley, who's the CEO of Modern Elder Academy and also the former chief hospitality officer at Airbnb. So it's a great little connect on a previous guest. I think that was actually I think that was our first episode together too, which was cool. Okay.
That was a good
so
Arnold, Stacy. Very
Thanks.
good.
I just couldn't resist.
the Chinook, a CH-47 Delta helicopter, is situated on a peaceful 5-acre compound inside the Withlacoochee State Forest in the Croom motorcycle area, according to Airbnb's website. So the unique vacation rental, which sleeps up to 6 people, offers modern home amenities that cannot be found anywhere else in the world, the Airbnb listing says. It's equipped with 2 bedrooms, a pull-out sofa bed, a full bathroom, and a kitchen. And Joe, it's important to note that these features actually all do come standard in a CH-47.
I was going to say, wait a minute. I've been on a Chinook. I don't know if there's enough room for 2 bedrms in that thing.
Well,
No,
there's
it does.
usually Air
That's-
Force
that's
versions
standard
of,
issue. Oh yeah.
and then there's like the Marine. Yeah, you know, they usually have like a designator behind it.
No, in the Apache, we just slept on all our missiles and rockets, so we didn't have those luxurious accommodations.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well,
so this
I
one,
slept most of my time on Blackhawks, and we slept mostly outside.
Do you enunciate that better? You slept where?
Yes, I'm not going to repeat that.
Okay, all right, good.
all right. Well, this one bedroom is nestled in the cockpit, replicating the in-flight experience from the pilot's point of view. Not to say that 47 pilots are sleeping on the job, but the second bedroom is located at the back. It's too easy, guys. This is too easy. The second bedroom is located at the back of the U.S. Army helicopter. The loading ramp, where you can
ADA
almost
compliant, I might
feel
add.
the aura of many hardworking soldiers that were once loading supplies, cargo, vehicles, and themselves into the belly of this workhorse helicopter has been transformed into a cozy private balcony overlooking the breathtaking beauty of the forest, according to the listing. The Chinook also has a full kitchen, bath, and living area with custom epoxy poured countertops and tiles. The space is also equipped with air conditioning, Wi-Fi, and a TV. So I clicked on the link, which we'll have in the show notes, and there's a little bit more here, but it's a really cool Airbnb spot. I think everybody should go check it out. And I think Airbnb does a pretty cool job of, some of these kind of destination cool experiences. It looks really nice on the inside, and I think if anybody has the opportunity to go and stay, you should definitely check it out. It looks pretty cool.
I can't help but visualize a bucket, a honey pot. Like that's the finished bathroom is a gallon, like an old milk jug emptied out, cleaned out with some water, and a friggin' honey pot in the back with just some 550 cord and a whoopee.
It's a burn
shower.
pit. It's just more burn pits everywhere you go.
And a thing of diesel outside so you can burn your crap. Like a hasty.
You get an e-tool and a bucket.
A fenced yard sits right outside the helicopter alongside a grill for whipping up meals with friends and family. For anyone who wishes to relax in the sun or stargaze, the hosts have provided tons of seating and a hammock. During the day, the area is full of outdoor adventure, speed down motorcycle, mountain bike, and 4x4 trails. Go hiking or horseback riding through the beautiful and serene forest, or hit the water for fishing, kayaking, or canoeing. At night, gather around the fire pit and spend the evening stargazing. Anyone who wishes to book the Chinook or learn more about the fascinating vacation getaway can do so on Airbnb. That sounds like fun,
careful,
man.
you might end up somewhere you didn't want to be, though. That's the last thing. Like, get on that Chinook over there, and I'm like, I ended up somewhere in the middle of Iraq. So careful, guys.
Oh gosh.
Ma, Pa, where are y'all?
Careful. That's pretty cool. All joking aside, Airbnb does have some really cool venues. Pretty neat. All right. So were we?
No, I was gonna say, what was the name of the Wi-Fi that was on his secret Wi-Fi on the Navy ship? What was that called?
Oh, wait, are you talking about the gal who was running the secret ring?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the name of the Wi-Fi was, because I tell you what, if I went
secret
there,
Wi-Fi.
yes, if I went to that Chinook and that was the name of the Wi-Fi, I would be like, that is perfect.
No, the Wi-Fi password for the Chinook is the shit hook. That's the
Wish should have. My other vehicle's an Apache.
Yeah.
No, suck it, Apaches.
You have to type it in if you want any internet whatsoever. Oh, good times. If I remember what that is, or if
Failed fixed wing. Yeah.
failed fixed wing, yeah. They need to do one with a V-22 Osprey.
That is
Any
that's
you
just
V-22
confused.
Osprey owners out there?
Yeah,
Joe's
just
got a
let us know. I
Joe's
think there's
got a
some
good business.
decommissioned ones.
Joe's got a good business plan for you.
All right,
All
I
right,
can't
guys,
remember it.
Here we go. According to Task and Purpose, singer, actor, boxer, Rhodes Scholar, activist, and Army veteran Kris Kristofferson died September 28th at the age of 88. He was the son of the general and outspoken critic of American wars abroad later in his life, and he helped define outlaw country as a genre in country music. Born June 22nd, 1936 in Texas, he moved around often due to his father's military service. He enrolled in Sonoma College, where he was a celebrated athlete competing in rugby and football, among other sports. He also won a Golden Gloves boxing tournament. Man, this guy's an athlete.
Nice.
While there, he studied literature and eventually received a Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford University. That had to be interesting.
Yeah.
I can imagine like a country artist rolling up to Oxford, like uptight British people, where he's like, "Hey, let me get my guitar and strum it." Can you imagine all the girls?
Boxing.
Oh, yeah.
Country
We
outlaw.
think like when British
literary.
people come here, it melts like girls' hearts. Can you imagine like a country guy going to Britain? It has to be opposite.
With a guitar, because
yeah. So it was there he started his recording music career.
And legendary success with the ladies.
Right. So he's
Yeah.
a self-described military brat. Kristofferson's family was heavily involved in all the armed forces. His father, Lars Kristofferson, was a pilot in the Army Air Corps and stayed in. That's
Shout
where
out.
with the Air Force, he reached the rank of Major General. Chris's brother, Krager, became a Navy aviator and served during Vietnam. After finishing his studies, Kris Kristofferson joined the Army himself at the age of 25. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant. While in the Army, he attended Ranger School, earning a Ranger tab, and also eventually was
Ranger.
Rangers.
Danger Ranger.
Wait, isn't it true? Like you can earn a Ranger tab, but you're not necessarily a Ranger until you complete like a
Yes.
Ranger mission, right? So he was trained as a helicopter pilot, at Fort Rucker, and was later stationed in Germany
Yes.
with the 8th Infantry Division, and would later recall that he had issues with rigid structure and deference with authority in the military, but he stayed on
Guy's my
longer
soul
than
brother.
his initial yeah. He was eventually set to teach English literature at West Point, but he
No,
left the
never
Army to
mind.
pursue his dream at becoming a musician. So according to his biography, he decided that he wanted to hustle like Hank Williams to become a full-time musician. By his own admission, Kristofferson said that his parents were horrified by his decision to resign his military. His military experience ended up helping his music career, though. Living in Nashville and working mainly as a janitor in a recording studio, he also worked as a songwriter for other artists. He found some jobs as a helicopter pilot, ferrying people to and from oil rigs.
As one
Eventually-
does.
Yeah, guess this. So here's the coolest part of this little story. He landed a helicopter job for Johnny Cash. And he got attention as Johnny Cash's helicopter pilot, and eventually got a record job from his Sunday morning Calmin' Down, which became his major hit.
Oh, that song is so good, though.
Yeah.
What a
So in-
story.
In
Yeah.
1970, Kristofferson became associated with the outlaw country music scene and creative movement against Nashville's machine that dominated country music at the time. He became friends with other independent outlaw country singers like Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Merle Haggard. He would team up with Nelson, Jennings, and Cash, forming a group called the Highwaymen. Earning several hit songs, Kristofferson struggled with alcoholism for years, but eventually overcame his addiction. Outside of music, Kristofferson was a prolific actor known for his work in celebrated movies like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Pat Garrett, and Billy the Kid. He was leading man in 1976, A Star Born.
Star is Born.
Born, thank you, earning a Golden Globe for Best Actor. For many, he was well known as the Whistler, mentor for the titular vampire killer in the 1998 hit Blade.
Oh.
Yes.
He is an
Classic.
So he was in
outspoken critic
that?
of
Wow.
many
Yeah.
United States wars abroad. Later in his life, vocally opposing the Gulf War, speaking out against American involvement in Nicaragua and El Salvador in the 80s, Kristofferson remained a supporter of military veterans, though. While in the Army, he wrote Vietnam Blues, told by the perspective of an enlisted man. The song became a hit for Dave Dudley. Throughout his life, Kristofferson remained a steadfast supporter of veterans and in 2003 was awarded Veteran of the Year at the American Veterans Awards. Willie Nelson presented that award to him. He suffered from
Wow.
memory loss starting in his 70s, eventually being diagnosed with Lyme disease. He continued to perform and record into his 80s. He retired at the age of 81. So he's what an amazing veteran, supported veterans up until the end of his life, until he couldn't any longer. But such an incredible journey and to come so far. But I want to end this little story on a joke. So quick question for you, Joe and Adam. Are either of you Kid Rock fans?
I mean, like maybe in the early 2000s.
Yeah, when he first came out.
Okay. So did you know that if you play a Kid Rock song backwards, you'll hear Satan? But even worse, if you play a Kid Rock song forwards, you'll hear Kid Rock.
Oh, be nice to Kid Rock. He'll fight. He's one of us. He'll
everybody
fight in
knows
the
that.
Waffle House.
I had no idea the story of Kristofferson. Wow, that guy lived
They
a
need to.
pretty
They're going to make a movie, and if
awesome
they
life.
don't have Tyler Childers or Coulter Wall playing him, they're doing it a disservice.
I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't play him, to be honest, other than
You
like
do
the
it, dude.
singing
Yeah.
or like the Rhodes Scholar or literary prose.
I
Like,
am always
I'm
astonished.
lacking in a few areas.
Yeah, I'm always astonished with the amount of veterans that I am aware of. I am always astonished with the amount of veterans I am unaware of. And
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
Kristofferson passed away, I had no idea that he had served. So
I also love that nobody can speak more boldly for peace than a former warrior or veteran while still advocating for the veterans and those that have to go and serve.
yeah.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely. This kind of stuff is very sobering. It's a reminder that not everybody wears their service on their sleeve. And sometimes when you're talking to normal seeming people, not everybody has the 1,000-yard stare. Some people hide it better, or I mean, dare I say, recover better than me and some others have. But you've got people out there all over the place from all different walks of life. Some of them are Rhodes Scholars and musicians, and some of them are real warriors, but there's people out there that have served, and you never really know. Not everybody walks around wearing their their Marine hats. So
Well, I think it's kind of what we say is like we're all have our own journey. There's a commonality to it, but it's individualized, and we process different parts of our journey at different times in different ways. And so just recognizing that we're all on our own, path.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, all right, Alphas, thank you so much for listening. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, I think I like it.